Investors selling for a 40% loss. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, because today we're going to look at an article and talk about investors starting to sell at up to a 40% loss. This is from Domain. Investors offload empty Melbourne CBD apartments for losses of up to 40%. Now, those of us who've been following the market are not at all surprised. A lot of these apartments in Melbourne, well, they'd be for the workers that are coming in there. Some of them have moved back home, particularly in the retail sector, and education. International students are a big part of Melbourne. You've got all of Victoria is, in many ways, reliant on international education, supporting the economy and apartments. Also, you've got migration, which is non-existent at the moment. People will stay in apartments maybe temporarily before they settle somewhere else. All of these things are now coming to a head, and these investments may not be as good as people anticipated. So let's start by having a look at the current asking prices in Melbourne. Now here we have, this is from SQM, you can see houses and three-bedders, they're going, not too bad. They've been climbing up. But look at apartments, they've kind of been flat pretty much since 2018. We climbed up, and now they're sitting at 570 for all units, and two-bedders at 556. So not really, breaking any records. We can see here these are property listings, and you've got, not too dramatic. It's kind of a bit all over the place. If it's climbed up a little bit since the beginning of the year, we can see listings for 30 days, 30 to 60 days. You can see that's going up. We're about March 19,600 listings. Now this is house and unit listings. So we can see here this is for sale. Okay, you can see here most of them are houses at the moment. But look at units. And wait, we'll see when we look at apartment listings or like rental listings, what's going on there. So this is Melbourne rents are falling, everyone. This is the issue with regards to, well, your investment. If you're buying one of these properties, even if you're negative gearing it, you want to at least make some money. You want it to be affordable. You want to be able to pay your mortgage. You're going to have, remember, we were looking at those articles of the rent investors, the people who would buy or rent where they want to live but buy somewhere else. And they're all complaining about how they couldn't make their repayments, which, when you have the government stepping in, putting all these moratoriums on evictions, you can understand why some people would be in that situation. So it makes sense, while more properties might start flooding the market and apartments getting out. Maybe they have or investors in apartments getting out. Now let's have a look here. We can see weekly rents just from March 2020 for houses from 550 down to 511 for all houses. Look at apartments, guys. 434 for a two-bedder in Feb 2020, now down to 385 for a two-bedroom unit, guys. Look at that plunge. Same thing here, all units. Look at that. They've all gone down. This is what we're seeing. We were looking at just looking at the market and how cheap you can get a two-bedder now to rent. Now here's the weekly rent listings. Look at that. Look at that, everyone. Okay, right there. It's not, look at that. You can't, that's not normal. That is a huge growth. You're going from 15,000, give or take with change, over 30,000. It's doubled. So they're just all flooding the markets. People are trying to get tenants. So no wonder they're trying to get out. And look at this here. Houses for rents have barely budged. Okay, they've gone up from what do we say here? In August 2020, 6,000. April 2021, 8,000. So up 2,000. But look at apartments. They peaked at units at 23. We're now sitting at 21. August 2020, 16. But even you go even further back to February last year, before all of this happened. What were we at? 9,000. Everyone, guys, look at that. Nearly tripled or doubled. So when we see these type of things, it can't be surprising that investors are getting out. And this is the, the rental index that they've got here. I mean, you can see everything down, 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 down. 12-month change. Melbourne, all units down 11% rental returns. So investors are selling for 40% loss. Okay, they're selling for a 40% loss. So let's go through this article and have a look. I mean, is anyone watching this surprised? We've been talking about this for some time, that this is going to start to manifest. Maybe some people would be. But notice how it's not happening in houses. It seems to be more in apartments. And I've got a viewer poll where we'll see how many of you would be willing to take up an apartment. I've just been following Mascot Towers, and I went and watched the footage from an agent that can help people bankrupt, really. And he was talking to them about all their options. So that really brought it home, the risks that you're taking on investing in these things, the counterparty risks. You're assuming the builder and the developer, and everything's going smoothly. Investors offload empty Melbourne CBD apartments for losses of up to 40%. Melbourne apartment owners have offloaded inner city units at losses of up to 40% in recent months, as some apartments continue to sit empty, a year after Melbourne first went into lockdown to slow the spread of the coronavirus. City-based real estate agents say smaller apartments aimed at university students has suffered some of the biggest resale losses, but added that owners of larger non-student apartments have also experienced substantial losses as vacancy rates in the CBD and surrounding suburbs soared during Melbourne's extended lockdown. Well, we saw even houses are getting cheaper to rent, everyone. So why would you stay in a dinky little apartment in Dantopia when you may be forced to stay in there permanently when you can go get a house somewhere cheaper? Or for what you're already paying. John Stredegas from JMRE Real Estate in North Melbourne recently sold a one-bedroom apartment in Swatston Street for 180 grand, 30% less than the owner paid for it 15 years earlier. Okay. Property always goes up, crowds. Explain that. Explain that. Oh, poor guy. It had been sitting vacant for 9 months, and they simply couldn't afford to keep it. 9 months vacancy rate. Damn. We're seeing a lot of this, he said. Vendors can't find renters. They are distressed, and they're preparing to sell at a loss. That's if they can find a buyer. I mean, who would go in? Who would go in, everyone? Would you? I mean, if they're going to open up accommodation, if they're going to have students flooding back, maybe now's the time to snap up a bargain and just take the risk. Buy when everyone's worried. If you can afford to sit with it empty, and it's a solid building. I mean, if you're going to go into one of these things, if you're looking at finding a bargain, make sure you get a defects inspection. Look at the plant room, get them up on the roof, pay extra, guys. Go in the basement, look for any patch where they've repaired concrete cancer or leaking. Those are the type of things you want to look at. Get a builder mate in the game. Give him a cart and say, walk around with him. Well, what can you spot, mate? That might be better in some ways than a professional. Hey, they know all the tricks. Some apartments, we found out about concrete cancer in the building just by asking one of the people walking out there who was living there. And then I could spot it all. Some apartments are sitting on the market for 3 to 6 months. The investor market in this inner city has diminished. No one wants to buy an investment property at the moment, he said. Mr. Segregas expects the price of CBD apartments to continue to fall while Australia's international borders remain closed. We don't know how long it's going to be until international students can come back. It could still be another 6, 12, or 24 months away, he said. You won't be able to give them away if you've got no students to rent them, he said. Public records reveal dozens of examples of inner-city apartments that have been sold in recent months at a substantial loss. In November last year, a studio apartment in Carlton sold for $141,000, 38% less than the $227,000 it was purchased for in 2007. 2007. Wow. I mean, for 141 grand. If you've got kids going to uni in Melbourne, you might as well. I mean, damn. In January, a studio apartment in a high-rise, but you got all the maintenance costs. Don't forget that. It always adds up. A studio apartment in a high-rise building in Collins Street sold for $145, 36% less than the $228,000 the owners paid for it in 2004. There are dozens more examples. The agent who sold the Collins Street apartment, Anna Maria Stella, from Twig Real Estate, said 99% of the apartments she currently sells in the CBD sell at a loss. Occasionally, we sell one or two that break even, or even sell for $10,000 more than they were purchased for off the plan. But that is very rare, she said. Yeah, but if you bought it in 2007 and you're selling it for a break even, you're forgetting all the holding costs, you're forgetting all the interest you paid on the mortgage, you're ignoring the fact that you've got all the real estate costs and all the stamp duty costs. You're not breaking even. This is the thing, when you're buying property, to break even, you've got to take account of that, and plus inflation. Okay? Now, I know the RBA probably doesn't think inflation exists, but just look at your food price. However, Ms. Seller is quick to point out that she regularly sold CBD apartments at a loss even before the pandemic hit. She said the high vacancy rates and falling rental prices of up to 50% in some instances, caused by the closure of international borders and remote working, just meant that more investors had been forced to sell. Vacancy rates in the CBD peaked at 14.6% in October, but have fallen marginally in recent months, from 11.6% in February to 11.4% in March. Even before COVID hit, we were seeing a major oversupply of apartments in the city. From about early 2017 onward, we were starting to resell some of these apartments that had been bought off the plan for less than they were purchased for, she said. Yeah, well, that's off the plan. 2017, the market, we had a lot of heat there. It was, a lot of money flooding into the country. So I'm not surprised stuff bought off the plan then was selling at a loss. So before COVID, I'd get calls from vendors who were thinking about selling for various reasons, and when I tell them what their property is worth, they'd say, "Oh no, I'll have to hold on to it," she explained. Now they call and say they don't want to sell, but it's empty, and they need to sell, even though in most instances it will be at a loss. Ms. Stella says many of these CBD apartments she has sold recently have sold for 25 to 30% less than the original purchase price. Agents say city apartment prices have been impacted by the large number of city dwellers who fled the city last year for more space in the suburbs. Mr. Cedrigas believes it will be tough to lure many of them back. Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, it's a part of growing up. You're living in the city, you're having the enjoyable young life, and then you just go to the suburbs and become a boring middle-aged parent, which is awesome. Get up at 5 a.m., go to bed at 8 p.m. Cheers to that. Oh, I think Rachel went up the street and hung out with the neighbors months ago, and they shared one bottle, and that was enough. That was enough to give her a hangover. We're so old now. It's just awesome. It's a lot cheaper in many ways. When you're young, you party all night. Remember that, partying all night? And then, you may not even sleep and just keep partying the next day. Oh boy, yeah, not anymore. Even though more and more workers are being asked to come back into the office 1 or 2 days a week, I think many people would rather commute for those couple of days a week and have that bigger house in the suburbs than a little apartment in the city, he said. While new apartment building is forecast to slow in Melbourne next year, Angie Zigomanis, Director, Research and Strategy at Charter Keck Kramer, says there are still significant numbers of new developments due for completion this year that will continue to put downward pressure on inner-city apartment prices for some time to come. The Charter Keck Kramer report last month revealed that 16,400 apartments were forecast to be completed across Melbourne in 2021, while from 2022 the number of apartment completions will decline significantly, with only 3,200 launched in new projects throughout 2020. See, this is the thing with when you've got a project going and you're so far along in the process, you might as well just get it finished regardless of the market conditions, because you've got so much invested. At least you'll get some return than just having a shell of a building sitting there, perhaps. I know it's kind of the sunk cost fallacy, but you got to do the sums. There are still a number of big projects reaching completion stage, and a significant proportion of those will be in the central Melbourne area, Mr. Zigomonis said. These new completions are just going to add to the stock of vacant apartments on the market, making it even more challenging for sellers to achieve the prices they initially paid for them, especially when you consider they will be competing against owners who are in a position where they need to sell. So there we go, everyone, where they need to sell. Up to 40% drops, you know. Breaking even from something you bought a decade ago, nearly 20 years ago. Property always goes up, eh? Well, let's have a look at your responses to my poll, everyone. I asked you, the viewers, put this up last night. How much of a price cut would you need before you consider buying a Melbourne apartment? So 2% said they'd want a 10% price cut. What's going on with my mouse? 9% said they would take a 20% price cut. 30% would go in for 50%. And 19% said 80%. So most of them would go in for 50%. And you can't pay me to live or invest in Melbourne was the most popular response at 41%. And let's have a look at some of the comments that you all left on this. Where is it? Okay, I'll bring up the community. Things disappear in here. So if we have a look here, okay, you can see that, fantastic. Let's have a look, and we'll sort by newest first. So KMR, Tom Elliott on 3AW was calling first home buyers whiners for not wanting to purchase a tiny shit apartment in Melbourne, and that they should be snapping them up just to get their foot in the door. Well, his generation could get their foot in the door in the housing market with a 600 square metre property and a 3-bedroom house. Well, it wasn't 600. Yeah, well, no, it was a quarter acre. It's bigger than that. Bigger than that. 600 squares are small. But one of the things, actually, previous houses, you get two-bedroom houses, you get small, you'd have a 3-bed with only 1 bathroom, and you wouldn't have all the onerous requirements that they have now on houses. All these things add up, guys. Carl, lol, most livable city in the world, says the Sydney Morning Herald and the Guardian. Alawi and Rose, I would have chosen the last option if it said you can't pay me to live or invest in a Melbourne apartment. Okay, so they would buy in Melbourne, but can you get really houses in Melbourne proper in the city? Are there any left? You get probably tiny row houses, and you know, from my perspective, that's pretty much an apartment, isn't it? I know it's not, but you know. Left in December, never moving back, from Dank Tank. Michelle's Garden. Unless people work in the city or close to it and have tried staying, checked the quality of life close to the CBD, they aren't really qualified to answer this in regards to what it's like. So I should stick to opinions of what they imagine it's like. If it wasn't for the fact I love living on land with my animals, I would live in the inner city. I'd never live in the suburbs. We looked at investing in the apartments in Commercial Road near the hospital a long time ago. I'm sorry to say we changed our minds now, though. We went through 2 of them, and even back then, they were so beautifully appointed they could touch the block. What? They could teach the block a thing or two about modern living. The block's shit. Is the block meant to be like... Is this the pinnacle of design? The block's just... Okay, I can't stand it. I can't stand watching that type of stuff. Okay, I mean, this is the thing, well, I know some of these apartments where these developers, they've brought all these nice in their showroom, you know, all the sample apartment, all these nice products and fixtures from Italy, and you know, really well done up. Then they'll get them illegally copied in China and just stick them in place. Dodgy stuff. It's one of the moments in life where I think I will regret not having taken the finance on our house to do it. To be honest, my problem is I didn't want to rent such a beautiful space out in case it got wrecked and we lost out. So she's regretting not going in. The problem is you can't judge an apartment just by the fixtures inside it. You need this is the thing here. You don't want to fall in love with it for an investment. Not at all. because the person renting it isn't going to care about your fixtures or fittings. It may get you a little bit more expense, but then you're going to have to pay more rent, but then you've got to pay more to put it in. What you want to check is the build quality. You want to make sure that the plant room roof isn't leaking, you're not having water tracking down and then causing cracking and other issues and things like that in the building. Gee, I'm not even Australian, but it's sad to see you Aussies have a housing crisis like us here in Canada. Yeah, well, Drew, mate, we're the same here. It's common everywhere. Seems to be. 35-year-old born and raised Victorian. Lived 20-plus years in Melbourne, moved to Brisbane 6 weeks ago, and I don't think I will ever consider moving back. There you go, from Matthew. What are the replies? Welcome. Yep, okay, Carl's welcomed him officially to Brisbane. Now, Matt, you got to pick your footy team. They've got this thing here. You may have heard of it. It's slightly small in Melbourne. It's called rugby. It's different to AFL. They run into each other. That's my understanding of the game. It's funny. I still remember because I grew up in Victoria as a kid, and I came up here in primary school, and went to play footy, and I was doing AFL passes, and they looked at me like I was an idiot. Because back then in the 80s, I didn't even know what rugby was. It wasn't on the TV. It was all AFL. Mike, if I live in Melbourne, I know I'll end up in a gulag. Well, good old Don. Melbourne used to be a good place to live, but not anymore. Too much woke. Maximus Plain. Depends where. Some decent units in the middle suburbs, but I wouldn't touch those Dockland high-rises. I've got a brother who owns a couple of apartments in the inner suburbs. They look both unlivable and overpriced, but hey, the doomed times are meant to be the times to buy. So it could be a little package if you get it cheap. Have good tenants, and market conditions change. That's it. Eventually, everyone will get sick of living 2 hours away when bosses finally want their workers back. Yeah, that's right. I was talking to my neighbor, and he liked working from home, but he also liked being out of the office, away from the wife and the kids, even though he had the commute. Nope, never. Carmen, 46. After 60 years in Melbourne, so she's a Melburnian. 74, I moved to Darwin 9 months ago. Peace and a small place with everything I need. Hot but relaxed. I loved Melbourne as it was, but the world's most livable city, full of memories for me. Sad it has lost its soul. What exactly happened to Melbourne? Or a lot of things happened there. I know I went down a few years ago for a conference, and I was walking around Melbourne. I was on the phone. I rang up my mother and said, why did we ever move away from here? Melbourne's fantastic. The culture, the vibe, it's great. I'm thinking maybe I should move here. And then the next day it rained. And the weather. Marshall Bacon, I rode through Melbourne. What a s-hole. Let's build a wall at the border of the village to keep the crap out of WA. And DKH is, well, one word, Sudanese. And Kmart, I'm not sure they are to blame for much of the housing crisis, but they sure do contribute to crime. Many of my customers here in southeast Melbourne have told me stories, and the overwhelming consensus is they are criminals. There are a lot of issues with the Sudanese community in Melbourne. I've done a few videos on it. One argument I would make is that you've got an intergenerational culture shock. So you got the parents migrating over here. They've come from a conflict zone or civil unrest or the war over there, and they've come to Australia and they love it. Then their kids are growing up and they're facing the issues of they've got no memory of the previous country. They're just born and bred in Australians, but they're gonna face some social issues because that's just how it is, guys. That's life. And particularly being a teenager. So there's going to be some animosity between the generations. Parents won't be able to comprehend why their kids are having any issues in this fantastic place. And then that causes social issues, and then that leads to increased criminality. That's a theory I'm putting there, guys. Not many people are discussing the idea of intergenerational culture shock. Because it takes some time. And this is not just with the Sudanese community. It's always when you get, migration from a traumatic environment here to Australia. Go back to the 80s, go back to the 90s, to the other gangs that happened. We'll see if there's any discussion about that. It's probably not politically correct enough to discuss it. Well, it's different when you've got people migrating from a non, hyper conflict environment. There's less chance of that occurring. We'll have to see. But, Only time I've ever been robbed with it is with a skinny white bloody bogan guy. So, each his own, eh? I'm from Ballarat, where rent is not a rip-off, and used to commute. My commute into the west was still shorter than some of my colleagues in the northern suburbs. Noddy Smith. 43% of people would not go near Melbourne if you paid them. Maybe that's what Dan and they want. Well, no, the Chinese don't want to live in Melbourne. They live in Box Hill. That's a little bit further out than the inner city. And, I mean, you look at the Chinese advertisements for property. They're pretty sensible in the areas that they pick. Why do so many of your subscribers, commenters, see this city in such a poor light all the time? Well, we follow the news. It's a great place, and work is easy enough to find if you spend more time searching and less time complaining. Well, that's everywhere. That's no different to Melbourne. The accessibility and quality of life greatly overshadows that of other capital cities in this country. The people are warm, welcoming, and well-adjusted. House prices are decreasing, which means first-time buyers are in a great position to pull the trigger. Life in general here is vibrant and diverse, with plenty of citywide artistic expression, arguably the greatest nightlife on earth. Yeah, but see that you get over that when you get older, Symbol. You get over that after a while. The graffiti alleyways, it's just a bit of, hipster crap after a while. And you don't want to pay $8 for a latte when you go out. It's starting to look like the majority of people complaining here are the penny-pinching landlords who don't see an opportunity to hoard property and scalp people from overinflated rent. Okay, so are you a Melbourneian inner-city Green voter? Stop talking about a perfectly fine place to live just because it's been moderately affected by the pandemic in a way that's inconvenient to your bank accounts. There's more to life than that. Okay, so he's blaming others. Noddy's saying it's a Chinese-owned city. I'm just saying it's the weather. And I'll let you go through this one because it turned into a bit of discussion. What's the new Victorian number plate? Melbourne. Once you're here for good. Well, is it going to be escape from Melbourne? Svast is going, isn't Melbourne near Shanghai? Well, no, the Belt and Road Initiative has now been cancelled. I don't know why states are making agreements with foreign nations. It doesn't make any sense. Who would want to move to Comrade Doofus-Dan's paradise? Now it's just a matter of slipping the results of this survey into the mailbox of the gods, elites, kings, or the rulers of the Aussie real estate market to see them work their magic. At first I thought, well, an 80% cut is an absolute steal. And here's an interesting one from Lewis. But then I realized if Melbourne's property prices dropped by 80%, hang on now, I like that, that would mean Melbourne has gone from insufferable to unlivable. I mean, think about that. Drum Rudy, I live in suburban Melbourne, and that is too close to the city, working on moving the family north to our own sanctuary farm. Stan is reminding us of the Strong Cities Network. No, thank you. Jessica Lee, in the 2020s, the city is for masochists only. George, a certain amount of people buying those units in Melbourne need to be in Melbourne and get paid to be in Melbourne. No reason for anyone else to buy it for value appreciation. Well, yeah, I mean, he's right there. If you had a board, it looks like there's no way you would have made any money, guys. So, there are the viewer polls. Thank you all very much for giving us your feedback. Let's have a look at some solutions for this. Well, I mean, I'm always a fan of increasing financial literacy, but you need to diversify your investments. Do you think it's, here's the question to you. Do you think it's the time to snap up a bargain to get in there for some student accommodation? Do you think they'll open up the borders to flood the international students back in? And then do you think that will decrease demand for property there? Would you want to go in a little one better for a cheeky 150? You need to pay it outright in cash. Let me know. I wonder what chances you'd have of getting finance there for something like that. This is why, when a radio host is talking about first home buyers getting into these buildings, the banks may not even loan to people in it. They may be too exposed because they know it's going down. That's what I need to look into. I'll give my mortgage broker mate a call, to see if the banks are lending. That'll tell you where this is going. If the banks will lend to you to buy a little one-bedroom studio, then, you know, might not be too bad. But if they reach their cap, sorry, we've already loaned to 6 people in this building, we're not loaning to any more. There you go. So, thank you all for watching this episode of Heise Says. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using any of our affiliate links from Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can help us buy shares by signing up to SelfWealth, where you each get 5 free share trades, or signing up to Stake, and when you fund the account, we each get a free share. I think I got the cheapest one I could get. I got a GoPro share for it, but hey, it's a free share. You can also support us by buying our merch from Heise Says. We make homemade pocket squares here, perfect for any function or event. Or you can use Teespring to get coffee mugs and things like that are manufactured overseas. You can support us by using Gold Pass from the Perth Mint or by good old PayPal. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.